Mahou Sentai Magiranger is a season of Super Sentai that was never really on my radar of shows I wanted to watch. Thanks to its adaptation, Power Rangers Mystic Force, the look of it has always been a bit nostalgic to me, as they were actually the first Power Rangers toys I'd ever owned, and it's one of the seasons I vividly remember watching with my brother. I've also always heard that Magiranger was a good season, it's just that other shows really just looked more interesting to me. Until a pink Kikai based on Magiranger came along and stole my heart. So yes, I decided for my next season of Sentai to watch, it should be Magiranger. It has to be Magiranger because of my love for Magine from Zenkaiger. So I really wanted to experience the season that inspired my favorite character ever, see if the show was as awesome as her, see if there were any cool references between them, and compare it, I guess, to the little I remember of Mystic Force. So today, I'm going to talk all about Mahou Sentai Magiranger, give my thoughts on whether or not it lived up to the expectations I had for it, and more. But before I do, consider subscribing to this channel. You don't have to do it right now, but if you find yourself enjoying the video at any point, I think you should subscribe. It would really help me out. Also, leave a like if you find yourself enjoying the video. Anything you want to do, it's fine. Now, let's Majiro! No. One thing that really surprised me about Magiranger as I watched it is that, unlike a lot of the other Sentai seasons I've seen, this show has separate, distinct story arcs that are facilitated by the villains. The main Infertian generals get rotated out like every 15 or so episodes, resulting in very distinct story arcs within the show, beyond just like, oh, I guess there's a new general, a new person to fight. Magiranger feels like a growing, ever-changing storyline because of these rotations, but it keeps the consistency Sentai is so known for by not really shaking up the dynamic too much. So let's start with the beginning arc. The first phase of Magiranger was already a captivating introduction to the season, in my opinion. All of this is my opinion, by the way, I should have mentioned that. I love the semi-pre-established nature of the season, with a mentor ranger already existing and passing on the powers to the team before getting brutally wiped out by the villains. The key difference that makes this element and the rest of Magiranger so amazing is the family dynamic. This isn't just a random team of individuals assembled by a random person. It's a mom passing her powers down to her kids in the absence of her husband, and then she sacrifices herself to ensure her kids' survival. What a crazy opening for a show, and what a crazy motivation for our main rangers too, seeking to avenge their dead parents. I love that this early on, Magiranger shows that it's all about this core dynamic between the Ozu family. But I'll get more in depth about that later, because this first arc also demonstrates some other elements of Magiranger that I adore. I love how this show is always introducing little things and little details, and then brings back those ideas in different episodes. So like, Magi Mother's staff from the aftermath of her fight becomes a part of the base's decor, and then keeps coming back as a symbol for the characters of what they're fighting for. The same applies to Mandra Boy's song that talks about each member's role in the team. He only sings the song once, but the Ozus bring up their corresponding lyrics in their focus episodes as a sort of beacon to how they can help the team as much as possible. Urata's handheld mirror stays broken episodes apart. Hoka's signature pose is actually a part of her development and is in the second opening. Kai and Makito's love interests become recurring characters in the season, or the main focus of the movie. And Tsubasa... what this does is take an episodic storyline and give it this connective tissue between all these smaller storylines, connecting it into one big, grand story, and I'm a huge fan of it. I also love how this applies to the character's power set. The new spells acquired vary from stuff like the Magine prototype to just a simple shield, but they're all gained from one or more of the siblings learning some lesson or becoming more courageous. I think it's awesome to have all the powers come from this intangible idea, because it makes them feel super earned and not just a random ass pull ability. Whenever like a random attack comes back, it's not random. You can just think back to the character development of one of the characters. And if that wasn't cool enough, the idea that gives them their powers is the theme of courage conquering all that just permeates throughout the entire season. It's only the beginning, and I already love Magiranger, kind of including its villains. Bronken and Vankuria are just kind of there. Bronken is my least favorite character of the season. He's a generic Sentai Sentai boss that's really powerful and has nothing else going on for him beyond that. With Vancuria, there's nothing wrong with her. I just never really vibed with her splitting off into Nai and Mare. Like, that pun is epic. I appreciate there was an explanation for their existence, and the speech pattern had its moments, but it wasn't for me. Thankfully, the main villain of the first arc is Wolzard, and he's awesome. Evil Ranger, badass voice, hot armor design, top tier villain. Wolzard is great because he isn't exactly mysterious right now, but at the same time he has this sense of honor in regards to fighting. So the intrigue of his character is just how he operates in this morally gray fashion. As a dark sorcerer, I found him to be the perfect antagonist for our heroic mages, complete with his own dark spells. My favorite moment with him is definitely in the episode when he faked his own death purely to harness the power of a robo combo and acquire his own variant of it, which then allows him to steal the Majiranger's ability to form Magi King. What's really fantastic regarding his relationship with the other villains is that Bronken becomes more of the big boss type, even though Wolzard's in charge. So while we develop Wolzard's rivalry with Kai, Bronken is the one who gets defeated in our big climactic battle, but the true villain of it all gets to live another day and acquire another upgrade. Really quickly though, backtracking to that whole thing with the stolen Magi King powers, one element that really makes that storyline work so well is how great the Magiranger aesthetics are, specifically the... Wait, the... Hi Majin! The concept of the Magirangers actually being their robo components almost feels like this secondary transformation form for them, and it's so awesome. Usually battles without the big robot feel kind of clunky, but this just turns the battles into larger scale versions of the ground fights, and I'm so happy there are these moments that let this unique element of the show really shine through. They even get a roll call at one point. The Majin look really badass, Magi King looks awesome, they form a dragon, which, guess what, dragons are cool. Put it all together and we've got... Hi Majin. Okay, but one last thing about the Majin, your insert is just, it's... Let the 5 Majin, changing the Magi King. Majiranger's second phase doesn't let up after the thrilling finale that preceded it, starting off by doing what all good second arcs should do by raising the stakes as an extension of what came before it. So the Holy Saints. They've been an important part of the show as the source of the Majiranger's powers, literally part of their morph call and transformation sequences, but the end of phase 1 drastically increased their importance by actually introducing us to one of them. I don't really have any thoughts on Rin as a character, I just think that her introduction was a really neat way to heighten the stakes and expand the lore as she tells us about some specific holy saints, including the father of the Ozus. And so the second phase begins by introducing us to 2 new holy saints, the rivalry of Rigel and Sungel, Mimi and Magishine. Mimi. Funny name aside, I actually really liked Mimi as a villain. Actually, having a backstory made him an instant improvement over Bronken, but it also helped that backstory was super badass. Like, not only was he a holy saint, but a holy saint that looked like this. I really enjoyed how that factored into his own unique brand of magic, which obviously plays off the main magicians again, but I wasn't expecting it to play off Wolzard. What's really disappointing though is that the magic is given to Vancuria in the form of dark versions of the Magiphone, but we don't get a new Dark Ranger, or 2 Dark Rangers. Why would you create a dark version of a morpher and give it to a character that hasn't transformed, but then just not have them morph? I think it would have made Vancuria much more interesting just for the novelty of having an evil female ranger, but no, we just stick to the creepy vampire suit. Okay. Oh yeah, Mimi. To top it all off for the villains of this arc, Mimi just has a really fun personality. Initially, I wasn't a fan of his voice, but over time, I thought it was a fun juxtaposition to how menacing of a villain he really was. In addition to being a cunning, magical opposition to our heroes, he was also just a funny mummy. I was genuinely a bit sad to see him go at the end, but I also thoroughly enjoyed the finale to his rivalry with Sungel. So Sungel, Hikaru Hikaru, Maji-shine, he's alright. To me, I thought his personality was a bit bland. Compared to the other Magirangers, he's like not as bombastic, and I felt like in a lot of his episodes he comes across as a coward, which is really strange considering he's a magic god or something. I think I like the idea of Hikaru and how he impacts everything a bit more than Hikaru himself. As a magic god or something, he takes up the missing mentor role of the Magirangers, which is a really fun twist. When the Magirangers start getting their new spells, he's the one that starts telling the audience what courageous act unlocked the spell. He starts taking the team on training missions to become more powerful. It's a lot of fun. He introduces the concept of the mirror worlds, or whatever they're called, I forgot, which, like many aspects of Magiranger, I thought was just going to be a one-off element in one single episode. But then it comes back nearly every episode for the rest of the show, even as weapons used by the villains. I just found that a really fun element to shake things up as the show progressed, as it made a few of the fights more memorable and gave Hikaru impact as this experienced mage providing mentorship to the Rangers. But I think my favorite thing Hikaru adds to the story is... I mean, not really in addition to the story, it's Smokey the Magical Cat. I'm not really sure how I explain myself. He's just an absolutely charming character. His interactions with everyone are always hella fun, and he makes a great partner for Hikaru because of their contrasts. And he lives in the gun, and he's the bullet shot by said gun. And if that wasn't cool enough, he asserts his dominance over Will Smith and Robin Williams as the best genie by ripping off their song. But one thing Hikaru definitely helps continue to demonstrate is the show's attention to small little details that helps everything flow together so beautifully. The biggest example I can give of this within the entire show is the entire Magi Legend arc. In a crisis event, Hikaru gives the Ozus a matching set of rings and tells them to have faith in their courage. Next episode, he reveals those rings belong to 5 legendary magicians, and he believes they can become just as legendary as those heroes. And then, over the course of the focus episodes, each Ranger's arc is symbolically completed with a little flash in the ring. On a surface level, they're more or less handed the power up, but what actually gives the Magirangers their upgrade is the imagery of those 5 rings together, those 5 symbols of the growth and courage the Magirangers have taken individually, now united. What's cooler than Magi Legend being foreshadowed 5 episodes before its debut is that it's the reward for the growth of the characters over an even greater period of time, tying into the themes of courage, and I just think that's awesome. I love making such a prominent little detail tie into these storylines and have a super big payoff. After Magi Legend is acquired, there are still trials though. The whole situation with the siblings losing their memories as they turn into holy saints gives Hikaru his own moment by providing the cure in the form of the limiter on the powers. But my favorite part of this is, stay with me here, you know in Toku there's always moments where the heroes get hit with a really hard attack or whatever, and then they get forced out of their transformation, or more specifically their upgrade form. This limiter ability is the explanation of that in Magiranger. In the very next episode, when the Rangers are knocked out of Magi Legend, they say it's the result of Hikaru's spell keeping their powers in check so that they don't lose their memories. The attention to detail is so good that it explained a typical Toku trope. That's so cool. But do you know what else is cool? The Magiranger movie, which takes place just a little bit before Magi Legend. There's a whole sequence with the main Magirangers going to Magitopia for the first time and meeting the holy saints that appear behind them while they're transforming, kind of like Snow Gel that we'll meet later on. I kind of wish it was in the main show because it's such a beautiful piece of world building, but it doesn't they don't do much beyond that. So also the villain's design in that movie is pretty badass. But do you know who's also badass? Good old Woolsard, who returns to finish the arc in a beautiful way. I like that while the Legend arc was sort of its own separate thing, this thing with Woolsard ties more into how the overall arc begins, with the reveal that Dad was Holy Angel Blade Gel, and now it all ends with the reveal that Woolsard is the dad. What a crazy reveal. If you haven't seen Mystic Force already, I think that's one of the few things I remember from Mystic Force. But the great thing about the reveal is that it's not really about the shock factor, as the show even makes the reveal obvious at one point, and it is built up with Woolsard's code of honor starting to irritate the other Infertians. Instead, it's all about that emotion. It was a perfect choice to make this moment revolve around Kai because he has the unique connection to Woolsard through all of their different duels, and he's the only sibling that has never actually met his dad. His only memories of his dad are the times he's nearly died fighting Woolsard. And then once Woolsard breaks free and becomes a force for good, only to hurl himself back into Infertia to save his children from the onslaught of the evil overlord he's been serving for so long. It was such a beautiful, emotional moment that showed how beautiful this show's theme could be of family conquering all, and it's only 2/3 into the show. Combined with the simultaneous death of Mimi, I was extremely excited to see what path Magiranger was going to take now that there was such a drastic change in the status quo. I lied. To be honest, I was really nervous about the third and final phase of Magiranger after the initial episode for it. It just felt like we were introducing too many new elements for the point we were at in the show. The twist that Magi Mother was alive was sort of weird. So many amazing moments revolved around the fact she was dead, not to mention we literally saw her get killed, and established that dad was pretty definitively under the control of Enma. So to be like, oh, well, he still kind of had control, so he just poofed her away to a magical place, haha, it really felt unearned. And then because we got rid of both of the main villains, Vincuria is not a villain, it felt odd to have this entire pantheon of characters as the final bosses of the show without any prior establishment from like one sentence from Mimi in the previous episode. But as usual with things in tokusatsu I'm not initially a fan of, my fears were vanquished by just surprising me with how good the writing is. The idea of the gods just makes sense. Since Infertia is the opposite to Magitopia, the Infertian gods are just the dark counterparts to the Magitopian saints we spent so much of the last arc with. Additionally, while they've never been explicitly foreshadowed, the show has been building up to the Infertian gods in a way. In the first phase, the monsters of the week are just growling creatures called Hell Beasts. In the second phase, we switch to Hell Beast Men, which speak in actual sentences. So the next evolution for the generic monsters would be for them to be the most important monsters in the plot. Having the upper level generals be standard monsters of the week is a crazy idea to use for the final arc of a show. I've never seen anything like this before, and I loved this gradual evolution of the villains. And despite the number of characters, I feel like they're all balanced to some degree in the sense that I can remember some kind of defining character trait for them, even if I can't remember their name. So let's speedrun. That's Drake, that's his friend, that's the cool one, that's the one that gets bodied, that's the one that flirts with Vincuria, that's Fat Frog Friday, that's the leader who has a whole fish attached to it is his head for no reason at all. That's Shockwave from the hit movie Transformers Dark of the Moon 2011, that's Afro-kun, and that's no. I also really love the subversion of the seemingly obvious formula that was set up, where each god would get 2 episodes to fight until Mr. A Whole Fish's Mycranium transforms into Enma since he's the leader. Instead, there are different elements to each mini arc, and eventually an expectation subversion. Drake starts battling a few episodes early to build up his rival, Afro-kun, and seriously, why is your head so long? Go battle Woolsard in the underground. Afro-kun will turn out to be the vessel of Enma, leaving a couple of leftovers to create an exciting final battle besides just the main boss. Enma is a normal Sentai boss. They've been here for most of the time, but at the end of the day they're just a super hot monster design with a one-note personality. But connecting him as part of this ritual our generals go through, and as this extension of Afro-kun, the best villain in the show, just gives him the necessary punch for the finale. So the Infertians, at the end of the day, get a huge thumbs up for me. I'd say they're probably my favorite villain faction now. This also helped with my uneasiness regarding the return of Magi Mother. Since she's integrated into the whole Infertian ritual and is part of a mini arc, it actually feels like a reward to get her back. I still stand by the teleportation thing being an odd retcon, but the whole scene when she reunites with her children, I'm not crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. They're crying. We're all crying. What's with this song? Please stop. Yeah, I got played emotionally. Thanks, Magiranger. On the flip side, the final redemption of Wolzard is something I was not expecting. I knew about Wolzard Fire and thought that would just be the next appearance of the character in like a purified state. I was not expecting to get a few moments with Purple Wolzard fighting on the side of good, complete with Holy Saint style magic and effects. But even as the heroic Purple Wolzard, he was still shackled to Infertia in order to prevent Enma's revival. So Wolzard Fire is more of a representation of the dad being free of any sort of attachment to Infertia and harnessing his blazing passion to finally fight alongside his family. I also think it's really cute that it's like a present from his wife. If your wife gives you a tokusatsu suit this hot, metaphorically, she deserves the world from you. Because, man, that Wolzard Fire suit. But, as I mentioned at the beginning, ultimately my favorite parts of this season are how it utilizes family and courage. I really love stories about a character that's nervous about their own abilities and then through the beauty of tokusatsu becomes confident and powerful, and that sort of story is just the core idea of Magiranger. Courage is magic. All of the characters have that kind of story multiple times. All of the powers come from these kinds of stories, and it creates this beautiful story of growth that permeates throughout every single episode, every single suit, every ability, and I really love it. But what makes the story of courageous growth even cooler is, as I said, it's a true family with the Ozu siblings. Individually, I think it's cool they tie into the magic motif by each having a different brand of it. Like Makito has special armor, Hoka shapeshifts, Urata fortune tells, Tsubasa creates potions, and Kai is just powerful. Of the 5, my least favorite is Tsubasa. Not because I think he's terribly written, I just think he talks kind of annoying. That's it. I really loved his interactions with his brothers, like teaching Kai his passion for boxing and learning to step up as the older brother in the absence of Makito. In the middle is Kai, who really surprised me. He definitely had the most prominent form of growth as the youngest child, which makes total sense. The youngest will definitely have more growth. At first I was kind of like, okay, why are we focusing on the red so much here? But it doesn't draw attention from the others, and it does fit right into the story of courageous growth. The finale clearly shows this, as he has one of the most badass morphs and attacks I've ever seen, showing that he's no longer the reckless little kid that couldn't even become a ranger at first. What I like about the ladies is that they really contrast each other. Hoka obviously being loud and bubbly, while Urata is shy and quiet, and a lot of their focuses have them learn from each other. One of my favorite bits is that Hoka is the one obsessed with love, but Urata ends up being the first of her siblings to be married. The slow burn relationship with Hikaru was really wholesome and makes me like Hikaru a bit better. She's the one who unbinds his curse, the only other character to use the Magi Lamp Buster, and just always seems to focus on him the most. I can't pick one over the other though, for obvious reasons. Going into my viewing of the show, I knew that these were the 2 characters I had to look out for because I can see that Hoka inspires Majin visually, and I'd heard that Urata inspires Majin's personality. But I noticed that Majin is more of a blend of both of them, like in every aspect. Majin's shy personality is more present in Urata, but Hoka has a bit of an airheadedness that Majin also reflects sometimes. Majin does it better than both of them though. While Majin's fortune telling is a clear reference to Urara, Hoka's magic is more tied to attacks, which Majin goes on to replicate with her much more adorable attacks. No. I say it's more like as Majin, she's more like Urara, but as Zenkai Magine, she's more like Hoka. So both of them are awesome, but not as awesome as Hi Majin. But since Majin's not an Ozu, her last name is Jujube, my favorite of the Ozus by far is Makito. As a fellow big brother, I really just connected with all of his stories where he's trying to help out his siblings. Maybe sometimes they don't entirely understand, but at the end of the day, he loves his younger brothers and sisters and loves looking out for them, even if he has trouble showing that sometimes. But yeah, I don't really have much to say about the characters individually. They strike this perfect balance of being simplistic, but still maintaining nuanced growth across the season, so by the end of things, I felt like I've watched this big journey. But my favorite part of these characters in all of Mahou Sentai Magiranger is the family dynamic. In a lot of tokusatsu, I feel like my takeaway with the heroes is always along the lines of, wow, I really love seeing this group of individuals come together and become like a family. Magiranger subverts that trope by making the whole team a literal family from the start. Every episode of the season is some kind of focus episode between the characters, something like gold and green, green and pink, pink and blue, blue and yellow, yellow and red, red and gold, etc. But with the idea it's a couple of siblings getting to learn more about each other and make this family even closer together than they were before, now that's magical. Every interaction between the Magirangers are just infinitely better because it feels like I'm watching a real family come to life. Episodes where we think their teamwork is severed hit harder than they would in another season because it's the severing of precious familial bonds. The show even explores the idea of how families can evolve with weddings, as we have a lot of the characters have a love interest that they pursue, and eventually Hikaru becomes a literal member of the Ozu family when Urara marries him. It makes perfect sense for the season about family to kickstart its finale with one of the most sacred moments with a family, expanding that family. The final roll call of the season is just a whole family, mother, father, kids, and in-law, uniting their overflowing courage to destroy evil. As someone who values their own family traditions that may be a bit weird to others, magical moments that I hope I can replicate when I eventually create my own family, to have a tokusatsu season that makes this the strongest element of the entire thing was just amazing. There's a lot I love in Magiranger, from how the tiniest details can carry over and link episodic storylines, to how the villains are complex, unique, and badass throughout, to the show's epic looking visuals, and most importantly, its legacy inspiring Miyamura Magine. But family working together and being courageous together is what makes Magiranger soar above all as my new favorite of Super Sentai. I hope I've convinced you it's not just because I love Magine. I do really love Magine, and maybe she's made me a little bit biased, but genuinely, this season became my favorite on its own terms, and if anything, it just made me love Magine even more. It's definitely almost as awesome as her, but that's a story for another day. Be sure to let me know what you thought of Mahou Sentai Magiranger down in the comments section. Did you love it as much as me? Is there something that you weren't as big a fan of? Be sure to let me know. Thank you, patrons, for your support on this video. It's greatly appreciated. If you're not a patron, be sure to check out the link in the description if you'd like to pledge $2 and get access to this video early and a bunch of other special perks, and I hope to see you next game. Majinunu Majinu!